Oh yeah, it is new team challenge art. It was about damn time that I updated that, huh? I always just keep forgetting about it, you know? It always slips my mind. But it's good to see you all here. Hello, Arvid. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well. And then also lovely to see you as well, Lily and Megval. Hope you're both doing good. Welcome back. So yeah, hopefully everyone's having a good day. We'll swap it over soon. I'm just finishing up some last bits here before we switch over to the camera. Oh, and in the meantime, you get to enjoy more team challenge art, you know? Like, ugh, so good. So good. For some people that have been following our art station, yes, Beyond Extend has an art station. You've probably been overwhelmed by like all the team challenges that I've been uploading. I think we're about halfway too. So we still need to do a whole bunch of them. But yeah, expect more pings to be coming your way soon. Right, let's switch it over. Oh no. Oh, I changed it to manual. Hey, welcome to the community, Marix. Happy to have you. Well, yes, I guess. Yeah. Hello, Leia. Hello, Slate. Hello, Mike. Hello, Angron. Angron. It's an awesome name. Hope you're all doing well. So yeah, as I was saying, I've been going through our art station. I've been cleaning it up, removing some of the old stuff, and now we're adding all the new team challenges, and everything is looking like nice and consistent. I'm gonna do the same thing for all the workshops as well. That's gonna be pretty cool to kind of see that coming along as well. So yeah, it's an invite to go and check out Beyond Extend as well. You should add a link to Beyond Extend art station in the description. That is actually a good idea. I don't think we've ever done that. So let me do that right now. Let's see. Shows me how much I know. How the hell do I even do this? What is the most efficient way of doing this? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Edit. And then let's add the art station in there. There we go. Follow Beyond Extend. Let's add an art station in there. There we go. Thank you for that suggestion, Slate. That's in there now. Thank you. Is that a standing desk? Yes, Lily, it is. Welcome. Have you never seen the standing desk? People have been laughing with me whenever I do my transitions where I go like lower down. It is pretty fun though. But yeah, this is like, this is my biggest love. This is my biggest love, and also in certain times my biggest hatred as well, because I went for sort of like a size that can like hold like all the stuff that I want to have on my desk, right? Which also means that it's freaking heavy. So every time when I have to move, this is a thing that I don't look forward to. The rest of it is kind of okay. This thing is just, it's so heavy. Like you have to be at least like 2 to 3 people to like carry it, and it's so annoying, even with all like the legs detached from it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. But yeah, I do really enjoy having one though. Like I kind of go through phases, you know? I kind of use them. I kind of use the standing function mostly when I'm streaming. So that's like a little, I guess like a little, I don't know, bet that I made with myself, where I was like, hey, if I'm going to get a standing desk, I need to set up like certain occasions where I use it, or else I won't use it at all. So that is what I'm doing now. So every time that I'm streaming, I try to go as long into the stream like standing up, and then at a certain point you'll see me like transition down as well. I really want to get a stand-up desk. I hate sitting down for like 9 to 10 hours. Here's the thing though, like I love sitting down in the chair that I have now, If there's one recommendation that I can give to all of you out there, if you are thinking about spending money on something, it is the chair. Honestly, go for a good one. I've got a Herman Miller myself. Hashtag not sponsored at all, you know, so you can freely ignore that. I've heard a lot of people say that you can get really cheap ones from like companies or like offices that go into bankruptcy or something like that, and they'll usually sell them off for like really cheap. I wasn't fortunate from my side to not be able to pick it up for like so cheap, but I would still recommend it. For some reason, I always assumed you were sitting down. Yeah, for the most part. For the most part, I do sit down. I do get quite close to those numbers as well, Slate. Like 9 to 10 hours, I think that's like a normal day for me, just sitting down, even when I do stand up occasionally. So, yeah, I do spend a lot of, well, not recently, but I do spend a lot of time otherwise at my desk, just sitting down. Arvid, wait, you're from Belgium too? How fun. Yes. No. So, well, yes to the first question. No to the second question. I used to live in Germany. Well, so this is actually weird because I only moved to Belgium like a week ago. You know, so I've lived in like UK and Germany and then the UK again for like the past 10 years, and now I'm back in Belgium, like trying to get kind of settled in. We're not including the couch sittings. I kind of hate sitting in a couch, honestly. I like sitting in my desk chair so much that like, yeah, like we'll have like chill sessions between me and my partner, right? And then we'll sit in the couch. But like if I have to choose between like working on my laptop like in the couch or like at my desk, I will do it at my desk. 10 years. Yes. Oh, did I say something else? No standing desk. Yes, I'm here right now. But yeah, you don't see them that often, Lily. Yeah, I think for a lot of people it's the same question, right? Like, and the same question that I had was, is the standing desk functionality, is me standing up, is that going to make like a drastic change in the way that I'm going to be using my desk and all that kind of stuff? So, and I think I use it well enough that it makes up for the additional cost, right? So I can recommend it. There's some really good like introduction models as well. Like IKEA has a really good one, which is really good. I must have missed that. Hi everyone, by the way. Hello Josh. Hello. And then had Zeno's here as well. Good to see you. How are you doing, buddy? But yeah, we're just talking about some desk equipment. So yeah, like I was saying, like the best purchase that I've done is like, I think it's the chair first, the desk second, and then honestly the light setup like third. Like the light setup has made a huge difference. Yeah, so I can recommend it in that order, at least from my side, you know. IKEA has some great desks. Yeah, I think so too. Especially if you're looking for like an entry kind of level, right? Where you don't want to commit to like, I don't know, like a really expensive standing desk or something like that, and you just want to give it a try. I think IKEA is like the go-to, you know. But yeah. Anyway, how has everyone been? How's everyone's week been? Please let me know what you've been up to. Anyone make cool art? What are you working on? Just let me know. From my side, I'll give you an update from my side as well. So, there's a lot going on in the background. I'm trying to see how I need to structure this in my head, right? So, I think Belgian bureaucracy is the battle that I have with the end boss of Belgian bureaucracy. Like we're finally getting to like the last bit of health, you know? Like I think we're almost getting really close to like finally defeating it. That means that over the past couple of days, I've been more and more getting back into like daily routine, which is good. So the main intro task that I'm currently working on is overhauling the art station, right? That's the first thing that I want to do. I am also, and I'll show you a little sneak peek. I am also doing this, which you're not gonna see because I have it on manual focus. So have fun not being able to read this. I'll spell it out. So this is me trying to come up with a yes, Lily, exactly. Sticky notes, my favorite. It is me trying to come up with a ranking or scoring system or something like that where I can do portfolio reviews again. That's really what I want to do. Like I thought about it a lot. I think a lot of people have asked for it as well. And I do want to bring portfolio reviews back, but I want to do it in a way where I don't know, like this is the closest thing on the internet that I can sort of grasp to, right? I kind of want to make it like a scoreboard, so that you can kind of see it as like, I don't know if you watch like the financial show like Caleb Hammer, where he forgot the name of the show itself, but he basically gives you a financial score. I kind of want to do the same sort of system when it comes to like your portfolio review, right? So I'm trying to cut it up into like multiple categories. And the current categories that I have is so one category is called presentation, then artistic ability, technical ability, the artist, which I still need to find like some good like catchy thing for, and then also relevancy. I don't know how I'm gonna fit that one in yet, but hopefully with that you'll see that we have like a couple of categories that we can like assign scores to, so that you can see where you need to improve for the future, right? And then I'm gonna see if we can kind of turn that into some sort of consistent format that we can then use, and then I can also share that with other people, right? So I can then turn those categories into something that I can then be like, hey, look, this is an example of good artistic ability, right? This is what we'll look at, because every little posted here has basically like a bunch of different values assigned to it, right? So I was, for example, like the artistic ability, right? It's like how you can visually sell a convincing image, right? Kind of generic right now, but we'll see where we get with that. And you know how to guide a viewer or a player through a scene. And then it's also your knowledge of fundamentals like composition, color, shapes, all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm trying to formulate like some sort of system towards that, and I'm talking to like some other professionals as well to see if they have ideas that we can kind of like yeah, kind of just like formulate that into what hopefully is going to be like a standard that we can use going forward. Soviet wants to be the very best, like no portfolio ever was. Hell yeah. Henrik is saying description, text. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, that's the stuff that I'm trying to figure out, right? Because like the idea is that when we do portfolio reviews, that there is a consistent format, and then also if you want to get into portfolio reviews, you can then also see what, well, in this case, I grade portfolios on, but hopefully what the industry is looking at as well. So that even if you don't want to participate in portfolio review as well, you can just look at like the rankings and where you think you land on them and all the different parameters that you need to kind of hit, right? Oh my god, when you get copper, oh my god. I mean, there is going to be a part of that, right? Maybe it could be, I don't want to make it like a leaderboard kind of thing, right? Because that's going to like, it's a bit too gamified. But I think the purpose of that is just to showcase also, hey, these is like a rough overview of your skills. This is what you're already good at, but here's a thing that you can improve in, right? So that you kind of know where you need to focus in the future, or maybe your next project you can focus more on, let's say, the presentation, rather than your artistic ability, right? Because what sometimes happens, and this is interesting to see, right? Sometimes happens is that people have really good artistic and technical ability, but then they just really suck at presenting it, you know? Like the thumbnails are just like really flat, the lighting is just not there yet. And it's like I can see like the beauty behind it, but if if you're not putting the presentation together, then it's really hard for other people to see the same thing, right? And that's where you lose, for example, like a recruiter, right? Because they're just going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, this, I don't know, this doesn't look like captivating to me, so I'm just going to move on, right? And you kind of want to captivate on every single moment that you get. This sounds incredibly helpful, and I love ways to measure and score myself and paste against. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to, right? Like that's what I'm hoping to achieve. And then we'll see. We'll probably do like a little trial run, you know, like get a couple of people together that want to be a part of this, and then we'll see how that goes, and then we can kind of tweak before we then, yeah, put it out there, right? Lilith saying, "What division of 3D art?" Oh my god, I don't want to make it that kind of ranking, right? That would be savage. Because also like there's an important component, right? There's an important component, as in it's my interpretation of your portfolio in your work, right? Which is obviously why most people are here and want to participate in portfolio reviews. But let's say you give another person that same sort of system, they might grade it like slightly different, right? So at the end, I don't know how I'm gonna do the grading system yet, but hopefully we can make it into something interesting. So yeah, I've been slowly tinkering away with that, like in the meantime as well. Been doing some workshop editing. So if you are a workshop tier member, you also have like access to the 2 most recent workshops that we've done. Those are up on our website, free for you to check out now, which is amazing as well. What else has been going on? The rest of my time has just been spent on like trying to race around town, really, to get some Belgian bureaucracy done. But again, I think that's finally getting sorted. So we're getting to a good pace where we can actually focus more and more and more back on the community. There's also one more thing that I okay. I need all of you guys' help for this in terms of accountability. Because this is something that I've been kind of worked on, and it's okay, but then I never released it. And it's, I'll actually show it to give myself some extra accountability. So if we go to this screen, hide all this junk, and then we'll open Notion. Let's have a look. Give me just a second. So we will go here. This. So this is something that I wanted to do for the longest time. There's a couple of things that I still need to figure out, but I felt like I got really close to being able to release this. So what this basically is an overview of games industry salaries, right? This is grabbing all like the publicly available data, correlating that into like little pages by country. And then you can kind of just scroll down to see like, hey, look, for a junior in the UK, like the average seems to be around like 32K, right? From all the data collected. Same for intermediate, same for senior, all that kind of stuff. And then you can kind of see by discipline and where the brackets are by art and all that kind of stuff. It is a lot. So I need to clean this up a little bit more. But I kind of wanted to share this, but I never really got to it, right? The only thing, and this is the biggest part why it's not out there, is that I don't like the way that it's presented now, because it is like a Notion page, and I feel like I want to incorporate that into the website more. But I have no clue how to do that yet, so that requires like a whole bunch of research as well. And then hopefully we can get something like that out there for like different countries. Obviously, the United Kingdom we have the most data for, and I think then we have like a whole bunch of data from France as well. So yeah, like 700 entries from France, and I think at that point it kind of goes down in like entries. But then hopefully we can release that, and then that kind of becomes like a thing where we can ask people to submit their own salary. It's all anonymous and all that kind of stuff, and then it automatically gets organized in the backend. But that's, yes, please do keep me accountable for this, because I wanna release this at some point. So yeah, ask me for an update on this from on a regular basis if you want. Right. It would be so awesome. It would be so awesome, like a relocation friendly chart too. What do you mean by that? Like a relocation friendly chart? Arvid is. I don't think Belgium has that many game studios that are well known beside Larian. Oh yeah, no. Like there's gonna be countries where like the data is gonna be slim, but it's always better to have any data than to have no data at all, right? Because there's yeah, Belgium is not great when it comes to opportunities in like the games industry, right? But there's other countries on the list that even fare less well than like Belgium does. I don't know how many entries I have now from Belgium. I don't think I even filtered this yet. So I need to set this all up. Yeah. From all the collected data that I have, from like the spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff, like we only have 5 people from like Belgium, you know, so yeah. That's not great. But yeah, it is definitely something to think about, something to tinker with. I do definitely want to release this and then kind of have this as like hopefully as like a live thing going forward. But like I say, some companies don't help with the visa thing. Yeah, that one is going to be tricky. This one is going to be more focused on the raw salary data, because where it gets really complicated is sometimes you have lower income, but that comes with the trade-off of the company having like good benefits, right, or a good stock scheme or something like that. But that is honestly where it gets like really tricky, because then it kind of muddies the water. Because then, okay, what is the percentage of the stock scheme? What is the percentage of your pension pay? Like, it gets really tricky, right? And then especially, it would be nice to see. But for example, certain companies will help with visa if you're a certain seniority, but can't help with visa. With visa when it comes to like a junior, for example, right? I do have some. Nah, more a relocation budget itself. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see. We will see. Yeah, I'm curious to see how I can make this look better, because that is honestly the biggest hurdle from my side. But we'll see. We will see where that goes. I'm settling in New Zealand in March, so would love to see statistics. Oh shit, that's awesome. New Zealand. That's gonna be like a really cool adventure. Someone was asking before, is that a Ubisoft logo? Yeah, that is. The little Ubisoft box that I got from when I was working there. I think it's filled with all my game dev stuff, really. Let's see. Yeah, it literally has like all my little convention bands and like convention goodies and a whole bunch of other stuff in there at the moment. And just like little reminders and like, yeah, stuff that I got at companies and stuff as well. Yeah, that's my little game dev box, I guess. The only studio that I know in New Zealand is the Battle of Exile team. Yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine used to work there. He used to work remote though. And then yeah, I think that is all. Yeah, or I don't know, like do they even have like smaller companies? Because for example, like Belgium has like Larian, right? Like going back to that conversation. But I do also know that there's like a whole bunch of like really, well, I kind of feel like the gradient of Belgium is like we have Larian, like that massive monster at the top, nothing in the middle, not that I know of, or, well, the companies that I know of that were in the middle, they kind of got really screwed up, like after COVID and all that kind of stuff, and they had to downsize drastically. So the way that I'm looking at it is that you have like Larian at the top, nothing in the middle, and then just like a whole bunch of small stuff. like at the bottom of it. So maybe that's the same thing in New Zealand as well, right? Where there's like a lot of upstarts where, you know, they're working on really cool stuff. But yeah. Yeah, Cyborg is kind of known too. Yeah, my friends used to work there as well. Yeah, but I don't know the size, right? Because like still even Cyborg is kind of known. Cybernetic Walrus is one that I can think of as well. Was that Kuken? I don't know how to spell that actually. There's one other one that I can think of that had like sizable numbers in terms of like people working there, right? But yeah. Hello, Artyom. Hello. So yeah, it's interesting to see. I wonder if New Zealand has the same thing going on, right? Where they have like a thriving, like really small scale development going on at the ground floor, which is interesting. That is actually one thing that I really want to do now that I live back in Belgium, is I wanna engage and maybe even run like our own like get together like in Antwerp. I live close to Antwerp anyway, so maybe it would be cool to be like more actively involved with like hosting like get-togethers and meetups and some stuff like that for like artists working in the game industry. That would be cool, I think. Even if it's just like a monthly thing, it would be cool. McVal is saying, I guess you could get a job out of with that workshop. Yeah, potentially. I mean, that's also New Zealand, right? Yeah, there's definitely opportunities there. Lily is saying hype. Lily, are you even? Please don't dox yourself. But like, are you even like within reach of Antwerp? Is it like easily accessible for you? No, I'm in the far north. Okay. Dang it, Lily. I mean, far north. Yeah, so that would. Yeah, a couple of hours on the train, I guess, right? That is true. Yeah. So yeah, that's also that's also a thing that I want to do as well. Like I've got like a bunch of my friends living in like Amsterdam as well. So like going there occasionally would also be cool. So I'll keep you in the loop, Lily. Like if Amsterdam is probably gonna be somewhat closer. Yeah. Oh yeah, playgrounds. Yeah, yeah. You said like the playgrounds event that was happening. I did have a look at it, which looks pretty interesting. But I'll need to see. I'll need to see if I'm gonna get there. No, it's one of those cases where I say if I'm gonna get there, as in like, oh, do I want to? But sometimes you kind of have to. You just kind of have to be, hey, look, we're just gonna go there, you know? They released a discount code for tickets because next year they won't do a Playgrounds Berlin. Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. So we'll need to check that out then. Yeah. Ranger is saying, yeah, come to Amsterdam. Let's go. It is literally like, I don't know, like a 2-hour journey from where I am, so. That feel when an ocean is in the way of joining an event? No, Josh. No. We'll make it. We'll make it happen at some point, you know. I think it's weird. I don't know if the US does has a lot of like local events, right? Like because here like in this would actually, so for people that live in Belgium, do you have like any recommendations for like any local events? I mean, for people that live in Belgium, it's probably going to be 1, maybe 2 in the chat, you know? Because I know one thing that happens like on a monthly basis in Brussels. But that's honestly about it. So it would be nice to check some of those out as well. Arvid is saying closer to Ghent. Oh, okay. Yeah, Ghent is a nice town though. Hello, Top G. Welcome. Yeah, I mean, there, like Lydia is saying, there are like a lot of lot of events. Like if you go into the Netherlands, right? Like playgrounds. There's everything procedural as well. They have monthly network lunches in Breda now, which is similar like the ones in Utrecht, which is close by to Antwerp. Yeah, yeah, we've been to the IKEA in Breda like more than I would love to in the past couple of weeks. Tomorrowland meetup. Oh my god, that stuff is sold out anyway. No, that usually sells out like on the day or something. Like Tomorrowland is crazy, even though I've never been. More money to Sweden? Almost all of the local events are in the West Coast in the US. San Francisco, Seattle. Oh, that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Indigo is coming up in May too, but I feel like that's more business focused. Yeah. Yeah, I need to explore what else is out there. But thank you so much for the recommendations, Lily. That's awesome. Denmark is in the way, the damn Danes. But yeah. So that's also a thing that I'm doing. I'm kind of keeping an eye out on a lot of stuff that's happening. I am potentially also going to get started on like client work for the first time ever, which is like really exciting. So I'm looking forward to that as well, to see kind of how that goes. And because one other thing, we've had a couple of workshops on how it is to be a freelancer, how it is to like, I don't know, work on contract and like remote and all that kind of stuff. But I've never really done it myself. So I've always kind of wanted to dip my toes in to see what it is and to then experience like how it is to work with a client and like having to do like all the contract setup and all that kind of stuff. And then also the invoicing. Because we've always been on the opposite end where like Beyond Extended is a business, right? So now it's cool to see it from the opposite end as well. So that's going to be cool. That's probably coming up in a new year as well. But yeah. I think next year is going to be a lot of exciting stuff. Honestly, it's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff. Oh, also one thing, and I'll actually add this to my to-do list as well because I wanted to do this, but I haven't written it down. What I want to do is I want to do a yearly recap of our community, right? Because we do a lot of stuff, and honestly, like some of the stuff sometimes gets so chaotic that I miss like a lot of it that happens internally as well. What I want to do is I want to do like a yearly recap and just maybe do like a small video or something like that and talk about like what happened in the community, like some of the highlights, you know, like some of the cool stuff that we've seen, all that kind of stuff. I think that could be really interesting because I remember last year we did something small, right? Like we collected like a bunch of data on like how many people posted, like who was the most frequent messenger and all that kind of stuff, right? And from that, we actually got like really interesting, just like reveals, I guess, as in who was the most prolific artist was one of the main things that came out of it, right? And it was like, oh my god, there's people that are just like making a project like every month, which is crazy. So I kind of want to do something like that as well. Talk about like all the amazing workshops that we have done. Like literally saying, do a BE wrapped. That would be cool. I'm actually gonna write that down as well. BE wrapped 2025. I think that could be cool. It's gonna be for the community at large, but yeah, I'm gonna do something. Right. Okay. Sergey, welcome. Good to see you here. We are gonna sit down so you can see the transition now. During this transition period, can I remind everyone that if you are new to the stream, that you can ask any question you want about game development, about environment art, about working in the games industry, all that kind of stuff. A small introduction for me. I've been working as an environment artist in this industry for about 10 years now. We're coming up to my decade-long celebration, I feel. Working for multiple multiple different studios. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and we can definitely talk about them, right? So feel free to use this chat as your personal questionnaire. If you want to ask me any personal questions, that's fine as well. Cool. With that being said, let's actually jump into things. Let's get started on some feedback. Hello, Maddie. Hello, Sheila. Good to see you both here. Hope you're doing well. Your stuff is coming along, like your project is coming along really nicely, Sheila. I've been kind of spying on it, and it's coming along really nicely. Right. Let's do this. Slate is actually on the ball already. If you want to go first, or if you're under time pressure or anything like that, feel free to raise your hand, and then we can actually decide who wants to go first. And we'll do it that way. Right. Let's have a look. So let me open the Discord as well. Then we can kind of see. So Slate was first. Let's have a look. Can I please just like tab this here? That would be great. Thank you. Oh, Arvid is asking a question. So, Oh, 2 questions. Cool. Thanks everyone for the question. So, first question. Did you start directly in the games industry, by the way? Or did you first do VFX and did something else before? No, I started straight in games. So, I started doing my internship in 2016. And that was for Frontier Developments. And that's a UK-based company. And the first game that I worked on was Planet Coaster. So, straight out of uni, well... Technically, when I was still in uni, my internship, which is a part of the uni program, I did that for Frontier Development. So from that point on, that basically meant that I was straight into the games industry from that point on. And I have been a part of it for, well, so there is a small gap actually. I have been a part of it for almost 10 years, apart from 2 years where after I left Ubisoft, I kind of did like Beyond Extend full time. And then decided to go back into it full time. So that's when I joined Playground Games to then work on Fable. Yeah, that's like a little short overview. So I've worked at like 3 companies now, and then I've been running this company for like 6 years as well. Running this community, you know, trying to share as much as I know with everyone out there. But yeah, thank you for the question, Arvid. And then Maddie is saying, hoping to do a mentorship in the new year with you, Tim, if you're still available. Yes, in the foreseeable future, I will actually have continuous mentorships open. So if you, and that counts for both like individual sessions. So if you just want like a bunch of advice, then feel free to book like a single session. But I also do like longer continuous mentorships as well, if that is helpful. So I'm hoping to keep them open in between like the contract work and some other stuff that I'm doing. That's cool, honestly. This community is very helpful. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Arvid. Thank you for saying so. Right. Hello, Ofik. I think I already said hello. I'm just like reacting to a little hand. Okay, so first we got Slate. Let's have a look at your work slate. So there we go. You can not read stuff that I've written down. So let's try to fix that real quick. Right. Okay. Let me go to your work in progress thread, and then we can see how we can best help you. Please don't make fun of your material. No. Why would I? It actually looks like really good. I don't know if you want feedback on that. Let me actually read. So, textures are work in progress for later. That's fine. I mean, all of this is work in progress. So question 1, I sent the before and after of the shot of the window concept and the trims. I need your opinion on whether if I should leave it as is for now or to improve it further. Same with the trims, as all I did is split the pieces. You're talking about like these blockout windows, right? Just want to double check because I was not sure on how to interpret the question, because I mean, it's totally fine to just try to figure some stuff out, keep it in block out, and then continue doing stuff on the other side of the building, right? You meant the black panels. Sorry. Okay. I mean, same same kind of same kind of response, really, right? Like, if you know that you want to do some more work there, but you kind of know the work that needs to be done, then that's fine, right? You can work on like the other more like a bigger impactful things before you then head back. It could definitely use some more work, right? It definitely looks a bit flat, but this is where, like, we talked about this before, right? This is where you don't have to do all of it in once. You can see once you get to the creation of your decals that you want to use on top of it, and then see how much the decals contribute, right? Because if you create like really interesting decals and you add them on the top of these black panels, that might be enough. But sometimes all you have to do is just experiment, right? So I would say do the decals first, and then if you need like additional stuff to really make them pop or make them more interesting, then you can always come back, right? It's this, and you'll see this in games as well, right? It's an iterative process where, like, even if I mentioned the concept of building benchmarks a lot, right? Which, for people that weren't there when I was explaining it, that means that in the games industry we build a benchmark which is supposed to set like the visual target for the rest of the team, right? But even in those benchmarks, as the engineers upgrade the engine, as more assets come in, more stuff becomes available. So even the benchmark might, to a certain point, get outdated as well, right? So it's all an iterative process. Sometimes you have to go back and forth and make adjustments. That's all fine. And sometimes that's just deciding. Usually the way that I decide things is, so if you have to decide, right? So let's call it my workflow on decisions. And this is going to be really simple, right? So my workflow on decisions is like, if it's a big question, and it is a big component of the scene, that means that we need to do this immediately. Because if I don't know, like, if I have a big object, I don't know how to make that big object, then, and the whole scene is going to rely on it, I need to figure out how I'm going to do that first, or else, like, the scene is going to suck, right? No matter how hard I push and pull with the other elements in the scene, if I can't get the big thing to work, the rest of it just falls apart. So that is honestly immediately. And then honestly, you have like a gradient, right? Like, from, if let's say you have like a big question, right? You don't know how to do, let's say these trims, right? Oh man, I don't know how to do these. Great, but it's like, in the grand scheme of things, it's a small addition to the scene. You got flexibility, right? You can, if you want to do it now, or if you think it's like the biggest component that still feels like it's missing in the scene, you can focus on that one first, or you can just circle back, you know? You got your flexibility there. But this is, I call it like a framework or like workflow on decisions, but it's honestly pretty simple, right? Like, if it's big and if you have a lot of questions, then focus on it first. If it becomes smaller, but you still have the same sort of questions, then, you know, if you can't figure out like how to make this like little trim look the most kick-ass asset in your scene, I don't care, you know, because we still have like all the rest of it to worry about. So, hello, Powertail. How are you doing? Yeah, I think I'm stressing the quality before even finishing the project, right? Yeah, and what usually happens, right? And this is honestly like pretty normal, right? What you're going through right now is pretty normal. What usually happens is we work in this way, right? So you have your whole scene. Then it's like, ooh, I have like an asset here that I want to make look really nice. right? And then we focus and we focus and we focus. And then at a certain point, we realize that we've only made like, I don't know, like 2% of our scene, right? And then it's like, oh shit. That oh shit moment is the point where a lot of people drop projects, right? A better and more sustainable way of working is you've actually heard it here a couple of times as well, because it's been a while since I heard it myself. But Leia, who's in the chat, actually uses this workflow, and it's called like the I don't even know what to call it, but like the L system, right? The reason why I first heard it was because Ubisoft uses this system, right? And basically what that means is L0 is block out but representable in shape. I think L0 has like color box, so that's usually, it's no longer a gray box, but it has like representable colors. L2 is where you can see the final shape and it has basic textures. And then L3 is final shapeable quality, right? And then sometimes you have like L4, like L3 plus or whatever, like some stuff requires more polish. But that is just an indication, as in like, at a certain point, your scene is just going to be looking like an L0 quality, right? Which is block out. That is usually the block out stage. But then what we think happens is that, okay, from the block out stage, I just focus on like one asset or like, I don't know, an area of the scene, and I make that like the best that I can. But that's not true. You can add like a lot of model quality to like all the individual assets in your scene without doing the textures, and then you're going through the same sort of process, but you're adjusting the whole scene rather than a single asset, right? Which is usually more sustainable. Right, a little bit of a side tangent there, but I think that's really important to understand that a good productive way of working doesn't always include just focusing on one thing until it's done and then going to the other thing until it's done. Because final thing that I'll say on that topic is that what also happens is that if you focus on a single asset and you're doing a whole scene, you are going to be pushing the texture quality of that single asset so far, and you're going to learn so much that at the beginning of the project, you thought that was like the best asset that you've ever produced and it's looking awesome, right? At the end of the project, that asset that you did in the beginning kind of looks mediocre, which means now we're going back to the beginning of the project and we have to start adjusting those assets that we made before because they don't live up to the quality bar that we set for ourselves with the last asset we made, right? And that's also a dangerous cycle, right? Because now we're on a treadmill and we're just trying to improve things as we're improving our skill set. This way of working is way more flexible because it allows us to change things on the fly and also realize that not everything needs to have the same quality bar, right? Like a pipe off in the distance, if you just slap like a tileable metal on it, that's not going to make a difference, right? Because we're not going to even get close to the camera. So who cares, you know? Right. Cool. Question number 2 for the material here. So the substance designer material, I've been using a gradient map technique, which is fast and cheap, but it's not satisfying me enough. I tried using different techniques for which I used a lot of mass in a uniform color, and I need your opinion on which looks better and how to improve it further. Well, yeah. So I think when you wanna create, especially your base color maps, right? We have some really great workshops on this, by the way. That could be really of interest to you. We had one with Javier Perez, who's really good at what it does in Substance. So check out that workshop as well. What I'll say, trying to keep it more general, right? I think the gradient map technique is good, but I wouldn't use it to get all your colors out of a single gradient map, right? So the way that I would use it here is I would start with multiple gradient maps with different colors and then try to separate like some of the pattern out, right? So let's say, let's say for a simple representation, right? You need to do this a bit better than I do. You can, in your tile generator, what you can do is you can link that to a flood fill, and a flood fill basically allows you to control the data of like a tile generator, like to create like really simple masks, right? What you then need to do is, instead of using one gradient map, pick a couple of random masks, right? That basically just like sample random tiles and fill them with different gradient maps. Because now we're not using one gradient map to fill out like the entire thing. We're already adding in some color variation from the start, right? And then we've laid out a base that we can then build on top of, right? Because once we have those individual masks, we can then use those tile masks to then go in with additional grunges and really build it up from the ground up, right? So what you're doing is good, but that's only the base. That's where you get started. And then we start layering it up, actually. So, yeah, in short, what I would say, gradient map is a good start, but then we need to do some extra work with grunges and masking and painting and all that kind of stuff on top of it. Because yeah, a gradient map with a flood fill is going to be really good. I use that a lot when I'm building tileables. And then those grunges are gonna help you a lot along the way as well. And sometimes what can also be really handy is using an AO map. Because if you set it to like or even if you have like the grooves, right, and you slightly color them slightly different compared to like the rest of the object, that's already going to have a separation between the two. And then you can use the AO map, for example, to add in additional layering, you know, in certain ways. So try to combine like at least a couple of techniques together to get a good base color map for your tiles. Yeah, we kind of skipped over that part of the question, right? So because you also asked which one is better and then how to improve it further, right? I would say, so in the bottom one, right? So like the new one down here. So this one, the color map is a thing that is just, it's too contrasty, it's too on the nose, it's too recognizable, right? And I think the color map from this one is easier to read. It is just like all the additional grunge that got added on top of it adds noise that makes the whole pattern more difficult to read, right? So combining both elements, like elements of both, is going to be good. Because even if you look at your reference material, right? Some of the stuff that I love here, and this is, you're going to have to figure out a way on how to do this, is that you have like really readable patches, right? Like this is a clear, recognizable section. And then you have a section that is just like broken up, right? Whether you want to do this or not, that's up to you. But I think your base texture needs to look something like this, where it's almost, it's very neutral, right? It serves as a good base. And then whatever you add on top of it, you do that through decals or additional layers or whatever you want to do, right? But it gives you more control, more flexibility with it. Right. Yeah, good stuff, Slate. Going to be moving on to the next person. Thank you so much for sharing your work. And we'll see who was next. So next up is Bowman. So let's switch on over. Arvid is saying, I'm not in the game industry, but isn't it that they make more of a plain version of the material and then a second version with a variation to use as vertex painting? Yeah, that is definitely one way of doing it, right? And it's a valid way. It just kind of depends on what kind of detail you want to go for, right? When you want like specific detail, like that detail that we highlighted here, for example, that is oftentimes usually easier to do with a decal because it gives you more flexibility. For example, if you're dealing with large surfaces, then it is actually pretty good to have vertex painting because then we can curate the material on a larger scale, right? So basically a way of seeing that is like vertex paint is made for like bigger surfaces and then decals is made for like more curated, more smaller surfaces, I would say. As a general way of thinking about it, right? Because they often get compared, used together in the same way. Right. Let's switch it on up. I recommend watching Johnny's Notes damage pattern flood fill tutorial. That's gonna be good. Yeah, anything with flood fill, if you haven't used a flood fill before and you're doing stuff with like tidables in substance, a flood fill is honestly gonna change. It's gonna change your life, right? It's one of those things where if you discover it, like you're always gonna use it. At least that was the case for me. I was like, oh my god, this is so much easier than trying to make like manual math and all that kind of stuff. It's so good. Right, so let's have a look next. Moment is up next. So, where are we? Here we go. Started working on a block out yesterday. I guess I want to ask if anything scale-wise is standing out, specifically the height from the floor till the balcony. Not really at the moment, honestly. I would say. Okay, let's actually take a moment to look. Jeez, I jumped the gun so quickly. Um, oh, that's the first staircase. Right, that's what they are gonna be. You gotta be careful with like once you add in those curves, right? Like how much space there is gonna be. Gotta watch out for that one. Let's see. I can't really see like anything else like immediately popping out. I mean, honestly. Yeah, it's a little bit of a shallower angle, of course, but we'll see. Yeah, I think what's happening here is that the depth here is way less deep. Right? Because it almost feels like between what we see in the foreground here and like the way that this is, there's not that much space here. Whereas it feels more substantial in where you have it. So watch that spacing. Let's see, the rest seems to be okay. There is a bigger difference between this door and this one, right? Because if we compare the two, you can kind of see that the difference between the two is bigger. This one is going to be this one is going to be slightly bigger, I would say, but still, yeah, that's something to take into account as well. So yeah, I mean, it's always a good trick to like try to overlay, even if it's not 100% correct, right? Like even just like overlaying it really quickly helps a lot of that with that as well. And I guess another question, any rule to snap the base of the balcony with the top point of the wall, as long as it hides the seam between the two floors? Any rule? No, you can just hide up. You can hide like any seam you want with like any mesh you want, really. So if you have like your floor, your balcony floor, you can just like slide that in between the two like meshes, right? So I wouldn't necessarily be worried about that. Yeah, it's a good start. It's a good start. Keep on trucking, I would say. Yeah. Hello, Victoria. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing? Cool, cool. Thanks. No worries. No worries. Thank you for sharing your work. We're gonna quickly jump over to number 3 in the list, which is Ofek. Where are you? You are here. Right, Ofek. We're gonna be having a talk, buddy. Also, first things first, I don't want to scare you. Let's see. So, you're saying, hi guys, I started this environment project inspired by my dad's hobby, making RC planes, which is cool. I love that. That's a really good inspiration to have. He always had a messy workspace and somehow at the same time looked perfectly organized. So I'm trying to recreate that look. Yeah, I remember my granddad used to have a place like this. It was like, it's chaotic, but he knew everything. Like if you asked him something, he would like just pick it up. It was so cool. My goal for the project is to improve my art fundamentals, composition, color, light, visual storytelling, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, also on the technical side, I want to improve my modeling, baking, and of course creating tiles and texturing. That's what I'm most like at. Okay, tileables and texturing. Cool. And now we get to the big part, because you're saying, as it's still my first environment project, no fancy and complex workflows at the moment. So that is a part where we have to sort of take a step back and really think about the way that we're setting ourselves up for a project like this size, right? What I noted down here as well is that the scope of the scene is big. It's not that the size or the scale of the scene is big, right? But the complexity and the density of the scale means that the scope is big, which means that you're gonna have to do a lot of work. There's a couple of ways that we can think about this, right? Because you mentioned no smart workflows. That means that everything is going to be made 0 to 1, maybe in an atlas, maybe, but like 0 to 1 for all the assets in here. That's going to be a lot of work, right? Especially to get them up to the same quality bar. That is going to be a lot of work. So this is actually where smart workflows do come in mind, right? Because at a certain point, you can start sharing resources between assets, and that's going to cut down on the amount of time that you have to spend to make an environment like this. Now, what I would suggest, if it is your first environment, and you brought this up yourself as well, I think. Let's see. I'm trying to decide the scope of the project. That's what you're saying, right? So the bench only or the full room? What I would say is, honestly, start with something like this. Right? And I'm trying to kind of give you like a camera angle that you can kind of work with. But that's where I would start. And then if you want to continue down the road and you still feel like you have a lot of juice in the tank, then we can sort of zoom out to the bench. And if that is done and you still have a lot of fuel in the tank, then we can zoom out and potentially do it like the whole room, right? But I can guarantee you, I can almost guarantee you that the full room is going to be somewhat unmanageable at this point, or you're going to be spending so much time. And let me try to give you an accurate read, right? If we're talking about the full room as your first environment, to be fair, I don't really have like any context on how quick you work or what the quality of the assets is that you've already made, right? So I don't really have a clue there. So I'm kind of going in blind, but that can easily take you multiple months, if not close to a year, right? If you really want to make it to like the highest level and get all the storytelling and all that kind of stuff in there. What I also often say is that for the stuff that you want to achieve, right? The fundamentals, composition, color, light, visual storytelling, and on technical side, your modeling, baking, and of course creating tilables and textures, right? You don't need a big scene. That little scene, well, quote unquote little scene that we said here, that has all those skills baked into it as well, right? Because scale usually means repetition. Because if we have more assets to make, that means that we have to hide to low poly and bake them down, do the texturing and all that kind of stuff. It's more just we're doing the same thing over and over, right? There's no real, I don't know, to me, there's a fall off, there's a curve, like a fall off curve where it just doesn't make sense to keep going because you're just adding more stuff to it, you know? Where you could be doing something else that could be adding a different skill to your portfolio, for example. Again, I don't want to scare you away from the project. I think it is a good way to think about it in terms of, hey, we're going to start out with a close-up camera, make it look as good as you can, right? And then if you still want to work on it, we then zoom out and we then zoom out again, right? And we build it up in stages. The benefit with that is that if you have a camera that is close up and you finish it, it's going to look good. You can put it on your portfolio and you can kind of build up from that point, right? If we start with the whole scene and the whole scene falls apart or you don't feel motivated anymore, I don't know, X amount of time into the project, that means that we don't really have like anything to gain from it. We can't publish it on our station, for example, right? We can't put it in our portfolio. So yeah, I would say start with the zoomed in thing first and then build your way up. Let's see. I would love to hear some feedback about the references, composition, and light, and how you would approach this kind of environment. So we've already talked about like how to approach this kind of an environment. Maybe to give you an idea on which kind of workflows you would need, right? So you already have, well, I'm assuming that you already know how to do unique, like hero assets, right? Like high to low poly, that kind of stuff. What you would also need in an environment like this is we're at least going to be looking at like atlases, which means that we pack multiple textures into one texture sheet, right? That's like one step up. And then from that point, we can then also go into sheets, potentially. Or even making, for example, in this case, right? Like if we're talking about like RC planes, if you make a really detailed like RC plane that is fully finished, what we can then do is strip it apart and then have the individual assets maybe with a different color on them. And then we can create like a whole bunch of new assets from that first asset with minimal amount of work, right? Because let's say, I don't know, we have a body of the plane, we have like the plane wings, we have like the propeller and all that kind of stuff. Like one big plane kind of turns into like a modular kit of like multiple pieces that we can then use for the rest of the scene, right? So that means that we need to be smart with how we set up the materials in Unreal, for example. Right? That means that if you want to use, let's say, a material in Unreal that allows you to change colors or something like that, that can be very helpful as well. Let's see what else can be helpful. Yeah, honestly, there's a lot of potentially. Nah, second UVs are not gonna do anything good for us here. So I think that's like a couple of examples of things that you could use. Now to your other question, feedback on the references and the composition of the light. I personally love the way that this light is already coming in, right? I love the way that we have like this kind of funnel shining on this like airplane. That is awesome. I love the way that is set up already. Like this shot is looking really good, especially from the beginning. So big fan of that shot already. And then when it comes to your references, I think your references are good, right? What I would do is try to extend, because now we have references that help us with establishing the scene, but we don't really have references that help us establish or texture the individual assets within the scene, right? So these are great for the scene, which is awesome, but we don't really. I would go into your dad's room again and then literally take like close-up zoomed in shots of like some of the planes that you want to model or some of the paints that you want to model, right? Because those like more intimate and closed-up shots, they're going to help you with the texturing of your assets so much. And especially that's why I love that you have it like on hand, right? Um that you can potentially still go into like the workspace, right? I mean, you do mention had a messy workspace, so I don't know if you still have access to it. But I mean, even then, you could go to like a paint shop, or maybe you have some paints from yourself that you could kind of just like take inspiration with, like how the paint is dripping from the bottles or something like that, right? But yeah, all things short, like the scene references are good. We need more acid references. Cool. Yeah. Cool stuff. Again, I hope that this didn't scare you away. It's just about like building a scene up with the highest possibility of actually finishing the scene, right? I think it's going to be good because I love the idea. I love the references. I love the way that you're going to go about it as well. It's just, yeah, making sure that we can get it done. Yeah. Thank you so much for showcasing your work, Alfik. And yeah, I don't think I've seen your work before, so welcome to the community as well. It's lovely to have you. Right. Cool. And we go to the next person. Just a reminder for people that are jumping in now, feel free to ask any questions about game art, how it is to work in the games industry, anything that can help you as well. Feel free to ask any questions. McFell is saying, I'll be back in 30 minutes if you could wait so you don't do mine while I'm away. Yep, that sounds good. Ofik was the last person from the list to raise their hand. So let's go through some people here. Oh, new here. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, and thank you for becoming a member of our community. Happy to have you here. Oh yeah, and if you have any follow-up questions with all the stuff that I just said, Ofek, like feel free to ask, right? I know that sometimes it's a lot of information that just gets dumped. So if you have any follow-ups, feel free to ask. Right. Let's go for Schwarzfox. Thanks a lot for the provided feedback. It helped me to push the model in the textures. I've made some final adjustments and tried to make good renders. Do we get to be nitpicky on the box again? Potentially. I think I'm gonna stay away from it for now, but because yeah, it's not my forte anyway. But Schwarzfox is asking, does the object look consistent in these renders? And let's start there. I think it looks really consistent. I don't really have the idea that this is like, I don't know, like a different asset or something like that, right? Like it feels like it's a part of the same collection, which is good. Should I further experiment with the lighting and angles or should I wrap it up? That's sort of like a personal question. I feel like I would be really happy with this if I were to give one piece of additional advice, or I guess additional work for you. I would put any additional work into telling a story, right? Because now we're doing a really good job at the presenting the asset. But I think what could really push it to the next level is what are we doing with this asset, right? Like, let's go with the idea that this is like an auction, or I don't know, goes into a museum or something like that. How do we then showcase that, right? With minimal work. For example, like a little plastic name tag with like where the object was found and like which collection it belonged to or something like that. It's a little bit of work, but it can really add to the storytelling of it, right? And I think that can be very, very helpful just in terms of giving it like a little bit of a story. It could be really, really cool there. Or I mean, I just named one, right? Because the studio setup that you have, like I've written down in the notes here, the studio setup kind of reminds me of a museum or an auction. This is optional, but it can enhance the piece even more. I just thought about like another idea as well. Like if you don't want to go with like a museum or an auction, maybe imagine this is like a studio where they do repairs or something like that. You know, where there's actually professional people that work on museum restorations, and maybe this is what they're doing. So the way that I could look like is just like a couple of tools next to it, with maybe like a bit of glue or something like that, right? Just showcasing that they've been working on repairing this box, or maybe I don't know, cleaning it or something like that. Which could be, you don't have to do all the assets by yourself, right? Try to see what's available on Megascans, for example, and then just, you know, have a couple of those things like next to it. Oh my god, Mike is saying, what's in the box? £5 or a mystery gift. Oh my god, please not a mystery gift. I'm so sick and tired of seeing those. Okay, I'm gonna go on a slight rant. Who else gets like aggravated by like those mystery boxes that you see on like every convention now? Oh, where you buy a box for like, I don't know, X amount of money, and then maybe you get lucky and you get like more value out of it, or you just get fucked over and there's like less value in it. Oh, so frustrating. We have normalized gambling. Yes, we really have. Oh god, and I hate to say it, but games have not helped. Oh my god. It is so weird, and it's the reason why. Forgive me for standing on my soapbox for a minute, but I also still remember like the days before it, where that wasn't like an acceptable thing, and I also remember going to the first conference where it was, and then I remember my friend buying one, and I was just like, why did you just do that? And you know, like from that point on, I was just like, yeah, I think there's some people, you know, that they just want to see the outcome, you know, and they just want to gamble, and they just have that like intention, right? Yeah, it was so weird, like seeing it like blood like all the conventions. It was really weird. Arvid is saying double it and give it to the next person. Yeah, see, yeah, it could be fun. I don't know. It's just like all I'm saying is not for me, you know. It's just weird. Never considered, like, never understood the concept really. Oh well, time to get off my soapbox again. Thank you for listening. Why? Soapbox or TED Talk, you can choose. Right. One show is saying, this week I worked on the ceiling destruction and the materials. I added more decal on the floor debris. For the ceiling destruction, I added more weathering and damage to the wooden planks, some metal bars and horizontal wood beams, which is awesome. I love to see like all the little bits here. This looks like way more interesting now. You did ask, I'm currently working on the details of the scene. What big stuff do you think can still be improved right now? I honestly don't know if this counts as big stuff. It is To me, it is big as in it's going to impact the whole scene, but the actual work that needs to be done is small. I got two things for you. Anything that looks straight. So anything that looks straight, try to find a way to break it up, right? And all the green areas are like things where I noticed that we just have straight lines, right? Even the side of the wall, you know, if you just have like a crack or like a bit of peeling paint or something like that to just break up like any straight lines in the scene at all, that is always helpful. And this is general advice for any of your scenes ever, right? So nothing is straight. Keep that in mind. Second thing, some areas that potentially feel unfinished. It is a big area here is where you added, let me just like hide this for a second, is where you added this cutout. This sharp line doesn't look good at the moment. We need to figure out how to blend that, right? You can use decals, you can do vertex painting, whatever you need to do. Like try to get away of that like sharp line. Because again, like any sharp transition feels very 3D, right? Like we need to soften those things up and like add variation and all that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know why this is purple. This is kind of like a random comment that I just saw, but I love this picture frame on the wall, right? The imprint of the picture frame. Where's the frame though? Right? I love this. But we talked about the ceiling damage, right? The concept of cause and effect, where hey, there's debris on the floor. That is because the ceiling is fucked, right? That connection, that grounds the entire environment, right? The same thing happens here, right? With that little imprint that you have, which is really cool. Where's the broken frame on the floor, right? Because that adds layers. I think that's really cool. So yeah, just a couple of remarks from my side. Yeah. But yeah, I think overall the addition to the damage that you've done up here look really, really good. That same sort of detail that you've done inside the roof, we now need to think about like the lip of the roof, right? Like the damaged area. It's gonna be cool. But yeah, overall, really, really great work and solid progression. So great stuff. In video games, Top G is asking this. In video games, what's the range of camera focal lengths usually? Does it apply to portfolio cinematics? That is a good question. I don't know if there's a range, right? Like I'm not like a cinematic artist necessarily. And I tend to go towards the extreme. So if you look at some of my portfolio work, maybe perhaps like the last one, what I'll do is I'll use a focal length that actually like an FOV that actually will distort some of the proportions, because I tend to use that to create a certain effect, right? Because for example, if you set your focal length to something like your FOV to something higher, right? That will stretch the perspective, which can then help with giving you the sense that like buildings are actually bigger than they are, right? Because it actually stretches the perspective of something going up, which is really interesting. Maybe that's just like my concept art like brain going a bit wild, right? Because I'd like to fiddle around with like those perspectives, and I focus a lot on like the impression that the work gives. If you're asking about like a specific focal length, I think if you want to do prop renders, right? I would go lower. 30 FOV, 40 FOV, something like that. I'm talking in FOV, right? Because focal lengths, I don't usually play around with those necessarily. And then for like larger environments, you want to go bigger, right? Because you want to capture more of the scene. There's actually a great tutorial from William Foucher on this exact topic. where he will basically go for, like, if you're thinking about like a camera lens, right? He'll pick like a camera lens and set that at like 135 millimeters or something like that, and then go like really zoomed in on a subject matter, because that is really good to create like depth of field, for example, right? So he used the example of Master Chief, right? And the way that you can really scrunch those layers in is by taking a longer, um, like a longer distance away from the camera, zooming in, and then playing around with the focal length to like scrunch up the layers and exaggerate the depth of field. But yeah, William Poucher has a great tutorial on that. It's exactly like in photography, 100%. And that's the thing, right? Like I learned game engines first and then kind of got more into photography. I've been taking pictures for longer than I've been using game engines, but like actually using a camera the way this is intended to, with like, like the shutter speed and focal length and ISO and like all that kind of stuff. I learned that after I started learning Unreal. So to me, I'm still thinking in like game terms, compared to photography terms. There's no rule. I thought 20 to 45 is usually where it's at most of the cases. I was wondering going 10 or 15 FOV. I mean, look, there's no set rule, right? It's just the lower you go with your FOV, the more it's gonna look like an isometric perspective. Like and for some stuff that can be looking really cool, right? For some stuff you can really play around with that, and it can help, like remove any distortion and can make it for like really clean renders. So there's no rule necessarily. I think what you're doing already, like playing around with it, is really, really good. For product design, I like those low FOVs. Yep, exactly. I think that's a good use case as well for them, right? Because you want to avoid like a lot of distortion that you have. Yeah, that's a good use case. Fairmore is asking, Tim, is it worth learning geometry nodes if I'm planning on learning Houdini anyway? No. If you want to make the jump into Houdini, then geometry nodes kind of feels like a step in between, right? Because geometry nodes, I mean, yeah, I mean, in your case, if you're going to be learning Houdini anyway, then might as well stick with Houdini, right? And make it simple. Because what you're doing is you're using two very similar tools to do very similar outcomes. So might as well just stick with one. And if you're going to use Houdini, then might as well stick with Houdini, because that's the most complex one. And it's easier to go a step down than to do what I do and learn geometry nodes, and then potentially, I don't know, at a certain point pick up Houdini if I need to. So if you're gonna do Houdini, might as well stick with the most complex tool. Right. Joe is back for some more feedback. Let's have a look. So Joe is working on the Royal Alcazar. I was wondering about this trim texture and working on based on this reference. At the moment, the simpler geometric patterns have been fully created in Designer. However, for the colored part, for the color part and the Arabic text at the top, I'm converting an image I found online into a height map. I wonder if that's an okay thing to do, or would this be frowned upon? No, it would definitely not be frowned upon. I wrote down a couple of things, which is like, you can totally use images. Let me actually. Selected. Let me actually make this a bit more visible. There we go. So yeah, you can use images from online sources, yes. But I will bring up a couple of caveats. In this case, because it actually contains like some readable text, right? Make sure that the meaning of it still matches what you're trying to set up, right? So that means that if you're translating any sort of text from any sort of country, do like a sanity check, right? And try to see what the meaning is. Also, in studios, it works a little bit differently, right? Because you can't just like grab stuff from like random online sources and throw that into like a commercial product, right? You have to be clean about like what sources you use and if you have paid access and licenses and all that kind of stuff. I just want to throw that out there, that you don't think it's okay to do this in the studio, because those are like two vastly different things. When you're doing this for like non-commercial personal work, you have like a little bit more freedom than you do when you work on like a commercial product. So that works definitely different. But yeah, like there's nothing bad about like just taking an image, then cleaning it up for what you need, converting that into like the data that you need, and then using that again in Substance Designer, for example, right? Obviously, you're going to run into limitations where if like, let's say your art direction comes up and says like, hey, I want this slightly different, then the only thing that you can do is really go to Photoshop and try to like, I don't know, create it yourself, right? But yeah. Overall, nothing bad with that. It's no taboo. And then also, I'm wondering if you had any feedback on this table to better match the reference. Right, let's talk about the table here. Two quick things from my side. First one, and the biggest one, right? We are dealing with like a massive difference in lighting conditions, right? So that's definitely going to impact what we're seeing, right? So that's also good to keep in mind. But the first one is color variation. You see how complex that like table is on the right, where you have like the more worn wood on the top because that gets more interaction, and then you get like more pristine wood down at the bottom, all that kind of stuff. None of that is visible in what we see in Unreal yet, right? So that color variation and that color complexity is really the biggest thing of what I see as missing currently. And then next up, it kind of goes hand in hand, the roughness variation, right? Where you have, and this is the thing that actually goes really hand in hand with the presentation, because once we can set up a proper presentation scene and we can see like the highlights and all that kind of stuff, the roughness is really going to play a huge part. But yeah, try to think about that as you're doing the next iteration as well. Give the edges where people run into it, put stuff on, like interact with the object. Give those a separate treatment from like some of the areas that are like pristine, right, or are less damaged. I think those are some good things to keep in mind. Yeah, a couple of quick broad strokes, bit of feedback. But yeah, the color variation one is definitely going to be the biggest one here. For now, at least. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you for sharing your work and good stuff. Let's see, we got a question in the chat. Mike is asking, do you know a good course to start learning Houdini, focus on environment creation? God, there was like the tried and true one from... Oh, what was it called again? It was like Houdini boathouses or something like that. But that is such an old tutorial. Let me see if I can even find it. Yeah, the Houdini procedural lake houses demo. When is this? From 8 years ago. Jesus Christ. Let's see. Where can I... Is there a link somewhere? Houdini procedural lake houses. Let me see. Yeah, that is the thing that I was also afraid of as well. Old Houdini tutorials are not really useful anymore. Don't know why though. I also don't know why. I don't use Houdini myself. I just know that this is like the recommended tutorial that I've always heard. So yeah, I'll share it in the chat. Read through it, you know, like and again, I want to say I don't have this tutorial myself. I just have heard that it's a good one from other people that have used it. If we're talking about like free stuff for Houdini, there's a lot of like good learning resources from Houdini themselves, actually. So if you're interested in like those, they have like a suite of like really interesting tutorials themselves, which I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but yeah. A friend of mine, Leia, she does some amazing work for them. So yeah. Let me see. So yeah, you got the Houdini Foundation stuff going on as well. I'll link it in the chat too. So yeah, who knows? Maybe that is helpful to you as well. Right. Let's see. Anthony Zhang is saying, I also recommend finding a specific Houdini tool and project you want to create and look for resources that revolve around your needs. Yes, Simon Houdini is pretty good. Yep, I also do recommend our workshop with him, which was a pretty good introduction. We have actually like a couple of really good like introductions to Houdini, depending on what you want to make. So yeah, that's definitely a good shout though, Anthony. Like the more specific you can get with it is good. Arvid is saying every year Houdini does a project aim at something. Project Pegasus is kind of focused on the game for environment. Yes, that's what Leia, friend of mine, is working on, or has been involved with every year. I think the last thing she did was the stylized demo. I don't know what the name of it was. She was involved with that one as well. Does some amazing work. Like honestly, I think I told you this as well, Leia. If you ever listen to this in a recording somehow, or for whatever reason, you always make me jealous when you post those things, honestly. God. I'll say it here. Okay, so don't go tell her, you know? Keep this between us. Let's actually see. Yeah, because before that she did like Project Grot. Where would you even find that? Tutorials? Tech demos? Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good shout. Okay, let's see. Yeah. I was on the Houdini side. I just didn't know. They call it tech demos. They're also really good. Yeah, but she was involved with Project Skylark, which looked really interesting. And then she did like Project Grot and Project Titan before, so it always makes me jealous when I see her post those things. It's cool, but that would also be a good recommendation. So yeah. Right. Let's see. We are looking at Oriente's work next. Oriente is working on an EOD bot. I did have to limit your questions. We only allow 2 questions per entry. So let's see. Question 1 is, how would you approach the texturing for this prop? Unique texture, trim sheet, tidables, and RGB masks. Like, what would you do? Honestly, for like a unique prop like this, I feel like the complexity, or yeah, let's say the complexity of like using an elaborate workflow doesn't usually justify it, because we can just make this as a unique thing, you know, and reduce the amount of headache that we're going to be incurring on ourselves and make it just as good looking as we can by using a unique texture. So that's honestly what I said, because it's honestly straightforward and it's the quickest way to get the highest quality, right? Because if you want to, let's say, use a trim sheet and then tilables and then RGB mask, sure, you can get somewhat close. But if you really want to get close to a unique texture, you're going to have to set up so many complicated masks and all that kind of stuff that it is honestly better to just use a unique texture anyway. So let's get straight to the source. Let's use unique texture for a hero prop like this. And then the second question is, how low poly can I go for this prop? So this one is actually always hard to answer, right? Because it always depends on a couple of factors, right? The first factor to me, and that's the biggest one, is the camera. The closer we get with our camera and the more that you want to show off stuff in detail, that means that we need to have a higher poly count to then also showcase those details, right? So that's where this comes in here. Because the closer we get, we need higher polys to support that. If you want to have my general estimation for like a range of polys, I would say for something like this, keeping in mind that we want to get relatively close to the whole object as well, I would say something around like 10 to 20k. Obviously, the lower range is better without incurring any visual loss. But I feel pretty confident that you can get like a really good looking thing, a really good looking prop around like the lower end, let's say like 10k, right? And for this optimization, just a tip, silhouette is the most important thing. For example, like all these like wheel threads and all that kind of stuff, that can all be baked down, you know? So this whole wheel thing, for example, you do like a quick exercise. That whole wheel, the whole wheel bases itself. Just you have a cylinder here. It's going to be baked down. And then we need that lip. I don't even think so. Right? So you have like a couple of segments here. You kind of want to retain this to a certain degree. You have like a couple of segments here, and that's the whole wheel, right? Because for the most part, we don't need to see this bolt because we can't really see it poke out the silhouette, so we can just bake all that stuff down. Same with the threads, right? Like the threads are so shallow that it doesn't matter. We can just bake it all down. We don't need that additional detail in here. Which means that we're going to be like really optimized with this kind of stuff, you know? Because again, it doesn't affect the silhouette. So yeah, that's the most important thing to first look at. And then for some areas like this, you could make the argument, but then you just make it like really simple. You just do like a silly cylinder that sticks out. You know, you don't need like all the lips and like all the detail. You can just make it like a simple cylinder. That's it, you know? But yeah. But that is something that you're gonna have to maybe go a little bit back and forth, right? Like think in iterations. See how low you can go. Do a test bake on certain elements, right? Where do a test bake with, test bake without, see what it looks best. Okay, and then go from that point. That's the way that I would approach something like this, or any asset really. Like always think about iterations, because sometimes, especially the first time that you're doing something like this, it is very complex to know the things that you don't know yet, right? So there's gonna be learning that's gonna happen in this project. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Oriente, and thank you for participating. Right, a quick one from Victoria this week. Victoria is still working on a sacred boat. I think this is going to be a relatively quick one. A question for myself. I noticed some issues when baking an armor from wood planks. There's some weird artifacts happening when I'm only using one edge. Seems like adding a supporting edge fixes it, but then adds up the poly count. Yes. So the main reason here is it either has to do with how you split your UVs or how you assign edges to your model, right? There's a general rule, and this is the biggest hurdle when it comes to baking things, is that whenever you split a surface off into like a separate UV island, so let's say the top surface, right? So the top surface is, this is your UVs, right? Let's try and make a square, please. Jeez. That's your UVs, and then you have like the top surface here. It's so small. You have the top surface here, and then the side surface here, and then top surface here, and the side surface here. These are all split, right? These are all separate UV islands. If we have that kind of setup, then we also need to assign them a hard edge on the asset as well. And that is going to take care of those issues. Yeah. Oh, there's another important rule here. The way that we do want to do this is any edge that gets close to 90%. We want to do this too. I did that for that example, but still had those artifacts. Then we need to double check and verify that the way that you're exporting your assets is correct, that it actually has the normal data like built in, because sometimes that can also happen, right? That we don't export like the asset with the normal data assigned, which can then also happen. What can also happen is that there might be some settings in your baking software that you need to take on and off, depending, right? Fairmore is saying, like my grandmother used to say, every hard edge is a UV seam, but not every seam is a hard edge. Exactly. I was looking for the image before, but I couldn't find it really quickly, so I couldn't add it on. But yeah, there's some old school wisdom going on there. Yeah, so that's what I would do. Right, like make sure that works, and then second, check your export settings, and then the third is your bake setting. Like my grandmother. Yeah, it sounds. I made it. Well, I guess I would call it Scottish. I don't know how other people feel about that. So you wouldn't add an extra loop, right? No, So it's actually a good question, right? And I'll bring it back to a personal story, or I'll try to at least. I used to do this a lot, where if I ran into baking issues, instead of going asking other people or getting feedback or getting help, or I mean, I would try and look it up, but if I didn't find anything specific, I would try to patch it up with like a soft edge, or like I would bevel it and then have a soft edge and all that kind of stuff, right? I can guarantee you now from experience that it is better to try to find a solution and see if someone can potentially help you with that, rather than trying to put a band-aid on it, right? These are some of like the fundamental things that every artist encounters, and it's good to kind of go through the paces. What I would give as a recommendation is see if you can find, maybe in our community, right? Like maybe talk to I don't really want to like pick like random volunteers, right? Yeah, that's a good shout. It's like troubleshooting channel is a good shout, because it's also been a while for me to do like specific baking on things, right? So someone with more up-to-date knowledge about like Substance Painter and all that kind of stuff could be helpful. Oh, sorry, I didn't even read your side note. Your side note says it might have been some issues with baking in Substance Painter or settings that I wasn't aware of. I guess I need some general understanding if extra edge loops are needed. Yeah, I don't think they are needed, right? Like they are definitely not needed, as in like that's the only way to get rid of that issue. There's definitely a way that you can get rid of this issue. It's just getting. Sometimes that might also happen. He's not a recommendation, right? Because I've seen this, and again, it's been a while. What I've seen is that it will show up as wrong in, let's say, Substance Painter, but then as soon as you bring it into Unreal, it's fine. So as long as in the final product or in the final render engine that you're going to be using, if it looks correct, that is the benchmark that I would use. If it looks good in Unreal in this case, for example, then you're good to go. And I would honestly just ignore some of the issues that it will throw up. Is baking in Marmoset such a big plus than baking in Substance? Painter Baker is garbage. Marmoset is like 20,000 times better. I don't know. I've not used Marmoset. I still use Substance for the stuff that I do. I don't think I see like necessarily like a big difference in the baking. However, what I can see, and again, this is already outdated, but like there are certain features that make baking in Substance in Marmoset like way better. For example, this cube map painting and all that kind of stuff, right? Like that's really good. I don't know if Substance Painter has the same thing now, but yeah. There are certain features in Marmoset, and also it makes so much sense if you're already doing presentation, right? That you do it in Marmoset, because then you don't have to then take it out of Marmoset and go into Unreal, because you can't really do like good presentations in Substance, in my opinion. Marmoset gives you more control in your bakes, like highlighting certain regions for better details. Yeah, exactly. Like it has like a couple of features on top that make Marmoset like preferred for a lot of people. Like, for example, all the people that I know that do like asset work, they will use Marmoset. Yeah. I exclusively paint my bake normals. Oh, I used to do that a lot. Hated it. It was out of necessity as well. Oh my god. Baking 2 maps and then combining them in Photoshop. God, I hated it. It's so easy now, guys. Come on, it's so easy. Look at me, just old man shouting at the clouds. Ah, dang it. I swear I'm not that old. Please. Right. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, Victoria. I mean, not helpful from my side, but hopefully there's like additional things that will help you. Too easy now. We should paint on paper and photo scan in the baked normals. Yeah, it's actually interesting to see that like there are productions that are doing that now, right? Like maybe not that far, but like hand animating or like making puppets and then scanning them in and then like doing stop motion, recording that and then putting it in the game, like Harold Halibut, right? And I saw another game quite recently that was doing the same, and it's like, dude, you have like all this luxury and then it's just like, nah, fuck all that, you know, we're just going back to basics. But it lends to like a really unique style. Also, it's really cool. Yeah, exactly, Arvid. Back in my day. God. This is the cool thing about games. I swear, I love that it changes so quick. But it also means that you have so many stories that make no sense, even though, like, 10 years, yeah, it is a decent amount of time, right? But it's not like you're talking to... It's not like you're talking to your dad who's been working in the factory for like 50 years and has seen like a bunch of changes, you know? Like it's not that crazy. But yeah, like I started when PBR was not a thing, and now we're moving away from like PBR again with like the introduction of what's it called, like substrate, you know? Hey, Swan, welcome, welcome back. When I was young, yeah. How you doing, fellow kids, and all that kind of stuff, you know? Like insert all those memes in here. But it is crazy though. Like it's crazy how much changes in games and like how it is weird that there's this dichotomy of, especially working in like bigger, more established studios, how there is a lot of innovation, but also there's a weird sort of hesitation to embrace new technology, you know? Like they both kind of work hand in hand, which is really interesting. Or like it takes a long time before like they adapt, I would say. How was it back in the day, Unk? God. God dang it. It was crazy. So that we were doing exploding bakes, doing like an averaged and non-averaged bake, and then like blending them together in Photoshop, and like solving baking issues by like grabbing one pixel strip and then like stretching it out because I couldn't bake cylinders back in the day. And it's just like, oh my God. So many painful memories. And we were doing like, oh my God, hand making normals like in Endu. I've told this story like 1,000 times before, but like Quixel, yeah, the same Quixel that is now doing all the fancy mega scans and mega plan stuff. They used to run a company that made like a really elaborate but like partially functioning, not functioning, like add-on suite for Photoshop that we used in production to texture like all the stuff that we did. Crazy. Anyway, McFell, let's have a look at your work. Hello, David Draw. Welcome. How are you doing? Let's see. Where is McFall's entry? Cool. So, hey, Tim. Been working on the door for this past week and I've been making some decent progress. I still got a few pieces left on the door. Would love some feedback on it. Cool. Question 1. How is the texturing as well as the model looking currently? Anything that stands out compared to the reference? Low res, unfortunately. What are you doing to me, McFall? What do you want me to look at? You want me to look at like this giant like watermark from Getty Images? Right. Is the only picture of that door. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Really giving me a lot to work with here, huh? Yeah, see? That's what I mean. Book a trip to Bhutan and then take some actual good references, you know? Come on. Where's the passion? Where's the dedication, man? Come on. We'll make do. Let's see. So, texturing. Yeah, texturing is the first thing that we'll have a look at. We're gonna go back to your favorite topic. It's the amount of noise on a given service. The first thing that I actually noticed was that the door looks quite flat from a distance, but there is actually like a lot of like really nice like small detail going on in the door as you get closer, right? So it's the whole same spiel as we talk about like other surfaces as well, right? I expect more larger surface breakup to be seen from a distance and then reveal that like close-up detail as you get closer, right? Because I think that could really make like a big impact. So I think is the only thing I did no sculpting on, so it's the only texture. Yeah, but like even with like a flat texture, right? You can still kind of get like, I don't know, some sort of like normal warping. Even if you don't do sculpting, you could even technically do the same thing within the texture, right? Just using the normal map. So that can definitely be done. It's just to get some like distance breakup, right? That would be cool. The second note that I made was that the color feels rather basic at this point, right? It feels like we're almost looking at like a pristine door, that is almost like relatively new compared to what we're seeing here. That is like, it's been old, it's been worn, and it's also desaturated. You know, it's kind of, it has like a different it has like a different tone to it on the whole door, and it doesn't feel as like intense in color. Maybe that's also because seen wide the color might be intense, so maybe that's something that you have to like reduce in color correction perhaps, but that could be something good to look into. You're saying there's some deeper cracks, but I toned them down a lot. They might be kind of visible at the top and the bottom. Yeah, not from the screenshots that I have, right? Did I crop any of them weird? Yeah. But what I would say is not even cracks, right? Like, I would almost... What can we see here? I would almost say, like, treat them as, like, big chunks of, like, individual wood and try to get that into the door, right? Because you can even see here, for example, there's, like, a split in the wood. And maybe there's, like, a smaller split here. Maybe you can do like another split here. And that can already add like a little lip, right? Like here you would kind of see like a little lip between the different planks. Right? So that can be cool. And then maybe what you can do is like, oh, maybe this plank has some like additional damage to it, right? And then we can then emphasize that in like the normal map again. And then of course we have like stuff at the bottom happening, which is cool. And even if you just have a flat surface, right, you can still do this on texturing, right? Yeah, so it's almost like multiple beams or like planks or like plonks are like together to make this door. Right, and then we talked about the colors, them being like really saturated as well. That can definitely help a bit. Also the texturing. Obviously, you're not really getting any help from like this stupid Getty Images thing. But I would have a look at how do what would this be like? Painted doors where? Because yeah, that's something that I would look into. Like how painted doors would like wear or fade over time, right? That you can see that at the edges, or even one stereotypical thing to look into is they push open the door, right? If you imagine where your palm would touch the door, that's the area where there's going to be a lot of friction. So I can guarantee you that the paint there is going to be way more worn than anything else, right? I don't know if they even have like anything on there, not necessarily. There is some wear in the middle crack, which is good, right? Like that sort of wear is good. I would maybe even emphasize that a little bit more. But I'm talking about like the wear that comes from just like friction with people interacting with. Also, tiny little thing, right? But this stuff, the placement of it is too perfect. You can even see that here, where like the center is actually offset. Right? Which is really cool because that kind of adds like a hand painted or like handcrafted feel to the whole thing, right? I have to go. It was really fun joining in. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Arvid, and hope to see you again in the future. We'll be here every week. Yeah, have a great day. May the normals be with you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Slight warp in Painter, can definitely move it. That's all good. Yeah. But that's all good. I think some of those like imperfections can definitely add a lot, right? The question number 2. I want to make this into its own portfolio piece. So apart from integrating it into the wall, is there anything you can think of that could make it more interesting and portfolio worthy? Let's see. Let's how is the wear on the frame and the rest of the door? So on the rest of the door, I think the same can be applied there, right? Like it's relatively uniform. I would really look at some better references, not specifically from this door, because I mean, even if you look at this door, right? Zoom in. This door has so much character. And I think if you want to, this kind of ties into the second question. If you really want to sell this as like a unique piece that's going to contribute to your portfolio, I think it is worth taking the extra steps, maybe doing a little bit of a sculpt, maybe, or even adding in some like geometry where we can see like visible cracks in geometry to kind of really sell the feeling of it, right? Because right now the door feels like really simple and really basic. And it's more the question to you, how there's some sculpted detail, but it's small. Yeah, I saw some sculpted detail here. I don't know if that's sculpted or if that's texture, but it's almost like I would use a sculpted detail for like the large parts, right? I would do sculpts for like geometric breakup and like large surface like detail, right? And then anything that you do that is well, small in your words, I would honestly not even sculpt that at all. I would just do that in texturing because it just saves you like a bunch of time, and it's so much easier to do the flexibility in texture compared to sculpt, right? And that's where I would take it to. So if you really want to make it like a separate artwork, right? Let's call it that. It's honestly, the question is how do we make this door a hero prop, right? What do we need to do to really push it to the point where this door can stand alone, like on its own 2 feet, without the rest of the scene supporting it, right? And I think for that we need to really add like a lot of detail in it, if that was the plan. That is really looking at like, oh, there's going to be some beautiful there's going to be some beautiful doors that you can see, that you're going to be able to see when it comes to your reference hunt. You know, there's some beautiful like crafted wooden doors you can take inspiration from. Because yeah, like, let's actually have a look really quick. And I'm just typing in old wooden door. Generic, but hey, it can work. Oh, that's actually okay. Let's make it a bit more specific, you know? Like old wooden door, Bhutan. Look at that, you know, the splits of the wood, like how the door is even not straight. How all the individual planks are like separated. You know, there's like a lot of cool stuff that we can see here. Mini Bhutanese style though. Yeah. Well, that's good, right? Like we just wanna get as close with the style and then see how worn some of them are. Because also, like another thing, well, with cracks that deep, would you sculpt them or can you do them in Painter? Well, so they both will end up in the same way, right? You can honestly do them in whatever way you want. Where I was going was if you really want to make this like a separate standalone portfolio piece, it might even be worth considering adding them in actual geometry. I know that this is like inset into a wall, but if you do want to get the best of it, like it might make sense. If you don't get the look that you want with like a sculpt or doing it in Painter, I would then consider doing it in actual geometry. If you still want to make it like as a separate portfolio piece, right? That would make it worthwhile to me. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff. Like even, and it's small stuff, right? Like the door not being in the center, the handles being offset, like it made up like wooden planks. Like these beams are split. The way that they overlap, so there's like a little bit of an overlapping here. And like even the frame just like coming in onto itself, right? You can see if we draw like a straight line, door is not straight at all, right? And it's like trying to replicate all that kind of stuff. You can definitely go in and do another pass on the sculpt without it being too much work. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to if you really want to push it to be a separate portfolio piece, that's what you need to do, right? In my opinion. Yeah. Good stuff, McFell. Thank you for showing this, though. Overall, great progress. I think the wall is definitely going to serve its purpose, as in, well, it's going to be for the scene itself, but also it's going to be cool to have it like integrated into the wall, you know? Yeah. Cool. Thank you, thank you. And good stuff. I'm gonna go and look at my low-res door for reference now. Do it. Do it. Soak up all the pixels. Right. Swan. Hello. Need to add the Getty images. Oh my god, can you imagine? Oh. Can you imagine that you were to do that on like a professional product? That you like ship a game, no one notices, and there's like a watermark just embedded in like the normal map somewhere there? Oh my god, I think I would die on the spot. I think I would also not be mad if like the industry like blacklists me, you know? Just imagine that. Oh my god. Right. Whip Wednesday, you even got the stars in there. Okay. That's looking good. It's been a while. When was this posted? 17th. Okay, so they're all yeah. I was just checking that all the ones with like the last one or the latest. That's cool. Other music for you. So, I would really like to get your eyes and guidance on the composition, lighting, and the contrast. Okay, so we kind of have some like separate things that we want to ask some feedback on, and then lots of cool stuff like dirt, dust, rubble, debris, and decals. I would love to add, but before I want to make sure that these three things are in a good state at first. Again, apologies for not posting sooner. Also, shout out to whoever posted on the LinkedIn to post the post about fake light shafts. Yeah, those are like some old tips that I've written like ages ago now. Yeah, I'm glad that they're helpful. Okay, so let's have a look. First, composition. I have not prepared for this one because I ran out of time before the stream. Composition. Let's have a look. Nice. I think the bottom one here has some good composition going on, right? I can give a recommendation here. So usually what I'll do, a couple of quick tricks, right? First one, rule of thirds. Oh, it's my favorite one. It's a really easy rule where you just divide your your frame into 3 equal parts. Please do it better than me just trying it by hand. And then basically where you have these intersections, that's where the power points are going to be, right? So those are the points where you kind of around those areas you want to have your focal point. So what that means in this case is potentially if we distort or like find a way to like frame the camera a little bit or position the assets better, we could almost have like the window here, right? And then like the barrel could almost be at the position where it's at. I think that's good. And that could give us like a good indication here. David Draws, you're asking when it is your turn. Are you the one doing the radio? Did you? Sorry if I make a mistake in my English. I'm French. No, don't worry. So usually in the beginning when the stream starts, when I start giving feedback, then I'll ask people to raise their hands, and then whoever raises their hands first, like I'll go through the sequence. After that point, I'll kind of just do random, or like, well, in sequence of like my Photoshop in this case. So yeah, for future reference, if in the beginning you want to raise your hands, I think that's going to be good. That could be very helpful. But there's only a couple more people, so we can go through that. Oh yeah, Anthony, why are you not in the list today? Oh no, sorry, Anthony. Yeah, I completely forgot to remind everyone of that as well. Well, we'll do it like this. Well, you were gonna be next anyway, David, and then after that we'll do Anthony as well. So back to you, Swan. So I was talking about the composition here. So if we stretch it out just a little bit and we put the window maybe a little bit more to the left, then we can kind of help the composition here as well. Because the reason why I say so is because if we look at the composition now, we're only really using this much of our frame because the rest of it doesn't really contribute that much to it, right? Maybe the chair. But like this stuff is not really necessarily that interesting to look at. So maybe if we can maximize the frame a bit more, that could be of interest. I'm not saying this as in like we need to always use the frame to like the maximum of our ability, right? But it is just a helpful device to help you if you want to. So rule of thirds, that's the first one. The second thing that I wanted to bring up here, right, is so composition. The reason why we do composition is you want to guide people towards an area or a point into our scene or in our image that is interesting to look at, right? Usually, I make this really easy by making that the area that is most indicative of the story, right? So let's say that this barrel is going to be our focal point, which is good. Then what I am missing is, let's say if we zoom in here, then I'm questioning the story, right? Like what are you trying to say with the visuals that we put on the screen here? Because I do get that this is sort of like a person who is kind of living in like an abandoned house and is trying to survive on maybe stuff that they find, right? But it feels somewhat sparse, right? Like it feels, or maybe not sparse. I think a better way of saying it is that it feels somewhat generic. Right? Because it is just like a bunch of like cans of food, but there's no indication of the person that's eating the cans of food, right? to make that clear with an example, for example, if we have like a backpack with like, we're gonna go stereotypical, right? Like just the first thing that comes to my head, but like a backpack that has like a pink teddy next to it, and there's like a big and a small backpack, then at least we know that it's potentially a parent trying to survive with their kid, right? There's like more of an indication of, oh, these are the people that are staying here, right? And that lends to the story. We can potentially also do that here by, let's say, maybe we don't do a backpack, right? But we have like, I don't know, a bigger plate and then like a smaller plate. And then maybe that's like one of those plates with like a little bear still attached to it, but like it also broke once, so it's also duct taped together again because that's their favorite plate, right? So it is stuff like that where I tend, or I try to give as much of a hint towards the people that are in this environment, while then also trying to tie it back into the environment as much as I can, right? So the little bear plate, right? Indicating that there's a kid in the scene, but then also making it broken and then duct tape back together. That's also hinting that this is like a place where like plates like that are scarce. So it's like at one point, if we break this down, right? A bear plate in this case is both an indication as like, number one, there's a kid present, right? There's a child still running around. And that also, by extension, hints to the parent, right? And then second, it is broken. So that hints towards like scarcity. And then from that point on, you could then be like, is this like a post-apocalyptic kind of situation? I don't know. And that's where we can kind of leave this like up to the imagination, right? Because sometimes we don't need to spell everything out. It's kind of nice to have that. But that's what I mean. Instead of like, you've got like the generic stuff already here, which is good because you usually use that for filler. But we need to infuse it with a story that is done by like hero props or stuff that is indicative of the people behind it. Right? I know we kind of veered away from composition, but the reason why I was saying all that stuff is because we want to have a focal point in our composition that is captivating, both visually and thematically as well. Or like, thematically or story-wise. Right? So that's how we tie that back into composition. Because you have to think about this, right? Like it's almost like you're shining a light to an area and then people run towards that area and there's nothing there, right? Or it's like the whole thing with like the rainbow with like a pot of gold at the end of it, and then you get disappointed that there's no pot of gold. Dang it. We kind of want to make that payoff for people visually, if we can. Cool. Okay, but that's kind of like about the composition, right? Let me see. So lighting. I think the lighting is actually pretty good. The main thing that I could say, but this is honestly more for like in the future, is that again, you could potentially hint at like more broken up boards and all that kind of stuff, right? Playing with the lighting and really specifically, like I would go as specific as if we do like a little bit of a lighting over paint. It's almost like you want to, in a shot like this, for example, the top shot. It's actually, you don't need these two. Okay, let's say you want to, in a shot like this, you want the focal point to be here, right? Like on the barrel. you almost want to break up the planks in a certain way where they are mainly gonna hit like the area that you want them to see, right? Because there's too much light going on at the top of the frame. So if we then channel that and we say like, hey, look, there's only going to be like these boards are going to open up, and that's going to highlight like the barrel and maybe like another area down here or something. We can then channel that light more towards like the wall in this case, but more towards the top of the barrel. But that's honestly the only thing that I have to say. I think lighting wise, it has an impact. It is moody, right? And I think we can tweak the final bits of lighting as we get closer to like the end of it. So yeah, that was my little rant about lighting. And then 3 is contrast. We kind of talked about it already. I think there's nothing wrong with the contrast really. It might be a little bit heavy-handed. In, for example, a scene like the top one here. But I actually don't mind it per se, right? Like in a situation like this, what you can then do is maybe you have like a fake light here, not a fake light as in like there's no light present, but I mean maybe they just have like one of those like I don't know old kerosene like lanterns, you know, to kind of light up this space whenever they need to. And that's a way where you can kind of get like some additional light in by, again, keeping it context relevant, right? Yeah. Overall, in contrast, like with the overall contrast of the scene currently, I don't really have too big of an issue. Because it's mood, right? If you want to tell this like pretty depressing story where people are trying to survive like from scraps and food cans and all that kind of stuff, I'm expecting the mood to be like dreary and like, you know, dark, you know? I'm not expecting it to be like happy and like lit up. So yeah. I hope that all made sense, Juan. Thank you so much for posting as well. We kind of skipped over like how good how good the scene already looks, right? Because I do like the way that you're handling your textures. We got some like really nice props on the barrel here already, which is really cool to see. So yeah, keep pushing, buddy. Keep pushing. Gonna be good. Yeah, thank you, Swan. Right, and now we get to your work, David, and then we'll switch over to Anthony. Okay, so I didn't make any notes, but let's have a look. I'm currently working on texturing an old Japanese radio. That's cool. I would like to get some feedback on it as possible. I'm trying to create interesting roughness that isn't too uniform, even though the material is the same. I would love to get some feedback on that specifically. Yeah, I had a look at this before the stream, and I think honestly you've done a great job in trying to highlight certain areas, right? Because even if the base material of surfaces is like relatively uniform, in games what we tend to do is we try to over exaggerate elements of the scene anyway, right? So that's where you get the benefit of maybe this is like a boring looking asset by itself, but once we add that contrast and the roughness and you add those like little nice bits of detail in here, that's where it gets really cool, right? That's where we see that nice bits of contrast. Cool. I will say the only thing, this is not necessarily to do with the roughness. I feel like this like coffee stain is a little bit too heavy-handed. I would almost expect it to be, yeah, a little bit more worn, especially in the base color, right? Because the base color really sticks out. And I would expect the response to come a little bit more from the roughness than it comes from the base color. Like saying really good texturing. So I do like what I'm seeing. There's honestly not too much more that I can say about like the first question, right? Like the interesting roughness that isn't too uniform, even though the material is the same. And that feedback. Because I think you've done a really good job on it. Because what we I think I mentioned this before, right? But we tend to exaggerate like the response of like items anyway. So for example, where you would see, I don't know if there's like an example here. Where you could almost make the case that like, let's say the roughness of this like sticker on the back is almost the same roughness as like the plastic, right? But even in here, like you can exaggerate that, right? Where like that plastic, that little sticker feels like it's way more shiny than the rest of the model or something like that, just to drive that like separation home. But yeah, I think you've done a fantastic job on that. Well, let's see. Question 2, what kind of render should I make for this? For in terms of like asset presentation on ArtStation. So I think first of all, you have like a really, yeah, we'll talk about the noise in just a second. But I think you've got like a good selection of renders already, right? So this is your main render, which is good. So that's number 1. Then you've got like your clean renders, which is like your second set, right? So you start out with your main. Then you go to like your second set, which is just like your more studio textures. And then you have like your breakdowns, right? What I would do for the breakdown is I would try to make it a bit more informative. So what I want to see for a breakdown is your poly count plus wireframe, your UVs, and your textures, right? And all of that comes back into like a breakdown, right? I think that's good. So try to render a breakdown into like something that's visually interesting, but also has like all the informative stuff of like your poly count, your wireframe, your UVs, your textures. Because yeah, that's going to be really helpful for anyone looking at your portfolio. Other thing that I was going to say is watch out. I don't know where this noise is coming from. I don't know. Is that coming from my end? I am just going to open this in like my browser as well, just to see. Yeah, I think even though this is not your asset, I'm assuming, right? This is probably some Megascan stuff. I would definitely turn down like the sharpening on the normal map because yeah, it adds a lot of noise. Right, you can kind of see that there's just like a whole lot of noise because what this is doing is that it's forcing people to look here and get distracted from the beautiful assets that you've made, right? And you don't want people to get distracted from them. So yeah, reduce the noise there to focus back on what is important in the scene. And I think maybe this might be like a more subtle change as well, but you could potentially even tweak the saturation of the base color of the table so that becomes like a little bit more, it becomes a little bit less in your face, and it allows you to focus more on the asset that's on the table, right? Because again, the reason why I'm thinking about this is that we're trying to redirect the attention from the table, and in this case, the most colorful thing, to the asset that you've made, right? So yeah, that could also be like an interesting thing to think about. But that's more like an optional thing. Yeah, but otherwise, good stuff. I really like this. Really, really good looking prop. Yeah, so amazing work. It's cool to see. So thank you so much for sharing it as well with us, David. Appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much for waiting as well. I know that the wait has been like 2.5 hours, so thank you for bearing with me. I'll make sure to announce like the raise the hand stuff next time. Yeah, thank you again. Right. And then Anthony, we're gonna jump over to your work. Take a sip of tea. Still got left. Now remember, I did have a look at this before, and the reason why I don't have you in this program is because you posted it, so there's nothing for me to download necessarily. You gotta get a soundboard and an instrument for the raise hand cue. That would be funny, actually. Like off to the races. All right. Let's see. Any finishing touches I should add to the piece in regards to lighting, post-processing, or details, such as more foliage variation, which is one of the main pieces of feedback. I mean, so here's a weird thing. You've already posted it, right? So I don't really want you to go back into the project. I think honestly it's fine, you know? Like anything that you get from feedback now, I would just integrate that within the next piece, right? So I'm kind of tempted to kind of skip over that because I think anything that I said when it comes to like foliage variation or anything like that, would be addressed last week anyway, or like when we talked about it, right? Your second question then, is there anything in the breakdown that I should consider removing or adding? I want my breakdown to show the to showcase the process and the techniques I used, but I also don't want it to be long. So I excluded things like graph breakdowns, pure ref, and landscape shaders since the landscape is barely visible. Yeah, like 100%. Like, I think you bring up a good point, right? A breakdown has the difficult position of trying to be engaging and informative at the same time. If you think people are not getting anything out of it, don't post it, right? That's also one of the main reasons why I don't post graphs of like Substance Designer, because I think there's almost no value in them whatsoever, you know? PureRef, same thing. It's like, hey, here's all the references that I used. Could it be cool for like, I don't know, maybe the 1% out there that wants to see it? Yeah. But like, is it going to be a hindrance for the 99 other people? Like the 99% otherwise? Yeah. And I think if you really want to do like an actual deep dive, right? And if you want to write about your process and what you've done and all that kind of stuff, that's where we have like a blog function, right? Where like if you really want to dive deep into it, just write a blog about it. And I think that's more engaging to read, and you can really see all of it rather than just like, I don't know, a graph or a pure ref without any context, right? Because yeah, you're limited. So I think that's a good choice. Let me actually quickly look at your breakdown. Made some material layers. Honestly, so I'm gonna do a live demonstration of what I think a lot of people will do, right? That is just like, hey, cool, you got material layering. What other functionality is there? You got 4 layers. You can vertex paint. Okay, cool. Next. Distance fields for blending. That's cool. Decals with palm and some controls. Stuff is cool. Yeah, you're kind of showing this here already, and I think again, it's like it's kind of showcasing what's more engaging, right? Because there's also such a thing as like showcasing too much, especially of the same stuff, where it's like, yeah, this is cool, but it's not showing anything different than here, and I think the video is more engaging then, right? Compatible materials, trim sheet, modules. Right, okay, so let's bring it back to what we said in a previous bit of feedback, right? What I am missing is I want you're showcasing a lot of technical ability when it comes to your materials, your blueprints, like that sort of technical ability, right? Which is good, and I love that you showcase that. However, what I'm not seeing is, do you know how to control topology, right? Like, is all that stuff optimized? Same thing for the textures. Like, I know that you use, so you have like multiple tileables, right? And a lot of tileables are used in like the architecture and stuff. But it would still be cool that if you have an example of like a hero asset that maybe use like a more unique approach, that you just take that one thing as an example and then break it down by like poly count, UVs, how you use it, right? And it only has to be one of them, right? So let's say, I don't know, let's take this arch here, right? As an example. And then just break it down and how you approached it and how many materials it has and all that kind of stuff. Because that gives people a deeper understanding of, hey, okay, this is how the rest of it is constructed. Because like a lot of it, if I spend time, you know, it's not too difficult to reverse engineer what you've done and try to match like the trim sheet with like the assets and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's also thinking about like how can you make that information really easy for someone who usually doesn't have a lot of time to grasp, right? Because let's say a recruiter is looking at 100 portfolios a day. They don't have the time to then look at like, oh, the asset here and then the trim sheet is here, scroll back and forth and like, okay, like, oh, this is how it's made, right? I mean, I doubt that they're gonna do that, but just make it as easy as possible for people. Yeah. Cool stuff. I think the rest of it looks really good, right? Got your main shots, got like the values, progress GIF, all that kind of stuff is looking good. Level materials. Yep. Is there an ideal way to showcase stuff like optimization outside of wireframes? Well, if we're talking about optimization, it's not only wireframes, right? I also want to see your topology too. So like your poly count, as in like, well, yeah, your wireframe, the poly count, the textures, the UVs. I don't think lighting complexity to me has a lot of value. I think it's a great question, Slate, because I think you might have even done the same thing here. Detail lighting. I think if you were going for like a lighting position, detail lighting could be good, but then lighting complexity becomes more important, right? Because detail lighting is just showcasing like, hey, this is where I put my lights, you know? Lighting complexity is where like, oh, this is where I put my lights and how functional they are, right? So if you're going for like a lighting artist position, then that becomes really relevant, right? Because lighting complexity and let's say like your material complexity and all that kind of stuff, they become more relevant to the disciplines that are going to be making them the most, right? There's no real ideal way, Anthony, to showcase like all of these things. But yeah, there's like so many ways of showcasing it. I like a very stereotypical format. I mean, it's a bit overdone, but no, not that epic. I want to do my epic pen, please. Hello? No, don't need you. I need you. Yes, it's going to be very overdone, but if you have like your presentation for your asset, you can have your asset, you know, like 2 different orientations so that we can see like the front and back maybe. And then you just have like, you know, poly count, cool, amount of textures used can be here. Maybe you have like the amount of textures, right? And then maybe this one can be the wireframe as well. Something like that, you know? Like it's nothing groundbreaking, but like that would be like a good starter formula. Because the thing that I tend to focus on is, again, like I'm trying to make it easy for people to consume, right? And like easy for people to scroll through. If you just have one image and it has all the stuff that you need, that's preferable. Right, Slate, thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And then, yeah, we'll see you next week. Right. Right, so that was my feedback for you as well, Anthony. I don't really have like an overpaint for you, so yeah. Well, I will say congratulations on posting the project though. Like massive congratulations. I think it looks kick-ass. I think I said so multiple times last week as well. I think you've done a fantastic job. So great job on finishing it. And yeah, congratulations again on posting it. Well deserved. And then last one for today, we got Oscar. Oscar is asking, I've reworked the arches to try and make them more organic. Let me know what you think. On the right is the reference. I do not. Okay, forgive me for saying this. Like, I don't really understand what you sculpted. I mean, so maybe, I mean, I'm not looking at like the whole image here, or like the whole asset, right? But is this what you sculpted? Like a little crack in here? Because the rest of it, it feels like just a beveled arch, right? So what that means to me is that how do we go about this? I think if you want to sculpt stuff, you just need to make it, you need to focus on like the bigger shapes, right? So for example, if we compare it to this arch over here, I guess, like you have some like interesting information that's happening here, right? So that could be sculpted, or I don't know, some like the really interesting edge damage that's happening, right? Same thing here as well, right? Like those are some really interesting things that could be sculpted, but I'm not really seeing like anything happening here, right? What I would expect is that this edge is kind of broken up and that we see a variation in the highlight that is being captured by the edge, right? Because right now it still feels like just a normal bevel. It doesn't feel like we have like any sculpted detail on it. Right? So I'm not too sure actually how you're approaching this. Because let me take it a bit more high level, right? So if we're doing a sculpt, let's say for the arch, what I would do is you make the base model in whatever program you're used to, right? Let's say Maya. Then you take that base model into ZBrush. You make your high poly, right? So this is currently commonly referred to your high poly model. And then what you do is you, depending on how much adjustments you have done to your asset, right? So if we do drastic changes to the asset, the base model basically becomes irrelevant, right? Then we need to take our high poly from ZBrush back into your program of choice and then reconstruct the low poly, right? What that means is that if we sculpted like all this like nice little like not edge highlights, like edge damage and all that kind of stuff, if the silhouette changes, we need to then make sure that the low poly also has those changes as well, right? So yeah, just making sure. And then obviously we can use, I mean, maybe not obviously, shouldn't make any assumptions. Once we then take those two, then we can use the information from the high poly to bake, which is basically going to be transferring your detail sculpt from your high poly to your low poly. Just want to make sure, right? That also means that at a certain point, if you're doing a lot of changes to your actual geometry from your base mesh, that your base mesh is no longer relevant, you know? Like we have to just discard the base mesh. That was like the stepping stone that got us to the high poly, which then got us to reducing the high poly back down into a low poly, right? Cool. So that was an example on how to do like the sculpted arch and hopefully get more detail and more interesting like edge breakup on your sculpts, right? Cool. Okay. There was also a question, should I overlap the UVs of each arch and then bake them down with the high poly damaged sculpt? No, you can't. Should I overlap the UVs of each arch? Well, so in this case, you only have one arch, right? Because if you bake them down, if you bake all the information of the high poly down onto the low poly, but it's all the same information, then that doesn't matter, right? Because looking at this crack, this crack, this crack, these are all the same arches, right? So that means that we only have one arch that is baked down, and that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be, so we only have one arch and the texture is going to be shared between all of them, right? So that means in this case, if you want to have a new arch, then what you would do, okay, try this again. So now this is what we have, right? We have low poly arch, and then we have a high poly arch, and then we bake the low poly down, we bake the high poly down onto the low poly, right? Now, this means that we only have, oh my god, this is a face. So that is one texture, right? This is only one texture. Now, if we wanted to have multiple arches with multiple variations and multiple different ways of like damage, right? That means that we could potentially use the same low poly, right? But we need different high polys. Because let's say I'll try to make this really clear, right? So we have one full arch. We have one like broken up arch. And then we have like another broken up arch. Well, in this case, I didn't make it easier, but whatever. No, actually, let's go back a little bit. So again, if we want to have multiple arches that have multiple ways of texturing, and let's say we have 3 different high poly sculpted arches. One has damage here, one has damage here, and one has damage at the bottom, right? We could potentially bake that all down onto using the same low poly asset, because we could duplicate this, and if the shape doesn't change, then that's fine, right? So we duplicate our low poly. However, we cannot store 3 different textures onto the same UV space. That's where, you know, this UV can stay the same, but for the other ones, we kind of need to re-UV them. Just be like, hey, look, this was my original one. Cool. Now I have one here, and then I have another one here, you know? And now your high poly from, like, let's say, your texture detail from like number 1 and number 2 and number 3 from like your high polys gets stored in different areas, right? So this is like number 1. This is low poly number 2 and low poly number 3. I hope that makes sense. So basically, if you want to have multiple high poly models that we bake down onto the same mesh, that same mesh needs to have different UVs. Because otherwise, we're going to be storing that same UV data onto the same location, and it's going to overwrite the previous bake that we've done. Right. I hope that was helpful, Oscar. Best of luck. I'll see if I can find some like additional resources, perhaps. But yeah. Right, and that was the final one for tonight. So let's switch it back over. Oh, wow, still 24 people watching. How are you all doing on this beautiful evening? Usually after such a long stream, there's a quite a casual drop-off. Top G is still here. Let's go. Thanks for sticking it out to the end. I am... This Swan never leaves. I appreciate it, guys. I really do. It is always helpful to have so many people here supporting. I really appreciate it. I am gonna have to leave, sadly, but sorry. I do appreciate you all being here. Thank you again for all the likes on the channel as well. We recently actually hit, I didn't even make an announcement about this, but we recently hit like, I think 1 million, what is it, 1 million total views or something like that on the channel, which is like fucking, yeah. Like, the only thing that I can really say is that I'll appreciate each and every one of you. Yeah. Now that I say that number out loud, is actually kind of crazy. Like 1 million, like individual people that just like watch stuff we put out. It's crazy. Yeah, that's all down to all of you. So thank you so much for the support. Yeah, I will keep everyone up to date about the progress on portfolio reviews, because I do want to get those back up and running, which would be cool. But otherwise, we will see each other next week. Thanks for watching, and yeah, see you then. Bye-bye.